Now, from Washington, D.C., Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome to the World Over Live from Washington, D.C. A huge show for you tonight. The primary race for the United States presidency rages. Rick Santorum swept in 3 states, moving him to the front of the pack this week. Tonight we'll speak to one of his primary challengers, former Speaker of the House, NEWT Gingrich, in an exclusive interview. And later, Father Robert Sirico of the Acton Institute returns to analyze the big news of the week. Also, the standoff between the Obama administration and faith groups over that HHS mandate has reached a fever pitch. Here to discuss the congressional plans to restore conscience protections in the new health care law is New Jersey Congressman Chris Smith. And if that weren't enough, EWTN, this network, is suing the federal government over the health insurance contraceptive mandate. EWTN CEO Michael Warsaw will explain shortly. If you'd like to join the program, the number 1-800-221-9460 in the U.S. and internationally 205-271-2980, or drop us an email, worldover@ewtn.com. Let's get things started. Here's the brief news from the world over this week. In a directive, the United States Army instructed Catholic chaplains not to read a letter from the military services archbishop at Mass. As many other U.S. bishops have done in recent weeks, Archbishop Timothy Broglio wrote a rebuke of the Obama administration's contraceptive mandate for health insurance and instructed his clergy to have it read during Sunday Mass. We will not comply with this unjust law, Broglio wrote. According to the Archdiocese for the Military Services, the Army stepped in, advising Catholic chaplains that the Archbishop's letter was not coordinated with the Army's Chief of Chaplains and should not be read from the pulpit. Instead, it directed that the letter be mentioned during announcements and distributed in the back of the chapel. Archbishop Broglio said the Army directive was a violation of his constitutionally protected right of free speech and free exercise of religion. Archbishop Broglio called Secretary of the Army John McHugh, who agreed that it was a mistake to stop the reading of the letter. The Archdiocese of the Military Services shepherds 1.5 million Catholics in the U.S. and around the world. And in the UK, the government has taken contraceptive mandate to a whole new level. Schools in England and Wales are now providing contraceptive implants to girls as young as 13 under a plan by the National Health Service, Britain's government-run healthcare system. The 4-centimeter-long upper arm implants are being given to students at the school in-house clinics via these in-house clinics without parental knowledge or consent due to Britain's healthcare privacy laws. According to government figures, last year nearly 5,000 girls aged 13 to 15 were fitted with these implants. No figures are available as to just how many schools participate in the contraceptive program. And in Rome, during an unprecedented international summit on sex abuse by clergy, the Vatican's top prosecutor said that bishops must be held accountable for their handling of such cases. At a press conference, Monsignor Charles Scicluna, promoter of justice for the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith, warned that it was unacceptable for bishops to ignore church law and standards when dealing with abusers.
We have the duty to cooperate with civil authorities in a common fight against crime. When I say cooperation, I mean full cooperation.
Monsignor Scicluna further warned that canon law provides for sanctions against bishops, up to and including removal from office. The Vatican-backed symposium held at the Pontifical Gregorian University concluded on Thursday. Priests and bishops from 110 ecclesial conferences and 30 religious orders attended. And back here in the U.S., another chapter in the legal saga of California's Proposition 8. On Tuesday, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals affirmed the 2010 District Court ruling that the voter-backed initiative protecting marriage was unconstitutional. In a 2-to-1 decision, the federal panel did not per se rule that gays and lesbians have a civil right to marry. It instead based its decision on a 1996 U.S. Supreme Court case that said a majority cannot take away a minority's rights without legitimate reasons. Proposition 8 defense attorney Andy Pugno said although the Ninth Circuit decision was not a surprise, it is, quote, completely out of step with every other federal appellate and Supreme Court decision in American history on the subject of marriage, end quote. He indicated that he would appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court, skipping an appeal to a full panel of the Ninth Circuit judges. And the seal of confession could soon be in legal jeopardy. On Thursday, the Michigan Court of Appeals heard arguments about whether a minister's testimony related to a possible confession may be used in court. According to court documents, Reverend John Vaperson of Metro Baptist Church in Belleville heard the confession of a teenage boy who said he sexually assaulted a 9-year-old girl. In March, the minister testified against the boy. A circuit judge tossed the reverend's testimony, citing Michigan's penitent privilege law, which reads that no ministers of any denomination shall be allowed to disclose any confessions made to him in his professional character. Prosecutors argued that the privilege doesn't apply in this case. Finally, EWTN, the Global Catholic Network, filed suit against the federal government on February 9th. They seek to halt the imposition of the contraceptive mandate. The suit also asks the court to declare the mandate unconstitutional. EWTN is the first Catholic organization to file such a lawsuit since the final HHS rules were posted by the Obama administration on January 20th. Here to explain is President and CEO of EWTN, Michael Warsaw, via satellite from EWTN and the Birmingham studios. Michael, thanks for being with us.
Great to be with you, Raymond.
Let's talk for a moment. Why are you suing the government, and who or what is the target of the suit?
Well, we're suing the government because what the government has done with this recent HHS mandate is to say to EWTN that despite your 30-year history of teaching the Catholic faith, you can preach, but you can't practice what you preach. This HHS mandate really has left EWTN with no choice but to sue. As we both know, Mother Angelica, 30 years ago, founded EWTN to be a voice of truth, to teach what the Catholic Church teaches to people around the world. And this mandate imposes upon EWTN an obligation to provide contraceptive services, sterilization services, and abortion-inducing drugs as part of our employee health care plan. And if we don't choose to do that in accordance with this mandate, our options are to discontinue providing a health care plan, in which case the government will step in and fine EWTN some $600,000 within the first year, and those fines will escalate in the years to come. Neither of those things are workable. They're just simply not something that EWTN can do.
Now, Michael, I've been getting a lot of emails, some calls about this, people saying, well, wait a minute, EWTN doesn't have any standing. It's not a Catholic organization run by the church. And I've been saying for months, the real important thing here is the individual conscience rights of employers across the nation. And that's what this speaks to, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. This is not about contraceptive services. This is about First Amendment rights. This is about the right of freedom of speech and the right of freedom of religious expression. What the HHS mandate has done is to say to us as individuals and us as an organization that you cannot enjoy the freedom of speech and the freedom of religious expression within the operation of your faith-based organization. For EWTN, that just leaves us in an untenable position on this.
Michael, why is EWTN, a nonprofit organization, involved in a lawsuit? Surely there are costs involved, and people have been raising that question when this news first broke.
Sure. Well, first of all, in our 30-year history, this is the first time that EWTN has ever actively engaged in a lawsuit against the government or any other entity, for example. So that should say to people that the severity of this situation and the importance of this particular issue. EWTN has been for many months engaged in a conversation with the folks at the Becket Fund for Religious Liberty, many of whom have appeared on your show on occasion.
Sure.
A nonprofit law group that is dedicated to defending and addressing issues of religious freedom and religious expression. So the Becket Fund has agreed to represent EWTN in this action pro bono at no cost to EWTN and to take this on. And we're very, very grateful for their support and their help in bringing this action forward.
Michael, before we go, what are you asking people to do, and who again is the target of the lawsuit? Is it HHS? Is it Kathleen Sebelius? Is it the White House?
The suit is targeted to the Department of Health and Human Service and Kathleen Sebelius as its secretary, who of course promulgated this mandate. It also names other officials in other cabinet-level departments of the U.S. government who are involved in implementing certain portions of this mandate. And so we're asking the court to strike down this mandate as being unconstitutional and to protect our right of religious expression and freedom of speech. For our audience at home, there's many things that they can do to help with this cause. First and foremost, to pray and to fast for the success of this and that this unjust law will be stricken from the books. Secondly, to continue their support of EWTN and the work that we do. While the Becket Fund is representing us at no cost, we'll undoubtedly see backlash from this, and we need to have the assurance of the continued support of our EWTN family to carry on our work. And finally, if people want to actually express their opinion on this, they can go to EWTN.com's website. There's a link there about this matter, and that will take them to a landing page with more resources and a link to the Becket Fund's petition where they can sign up and let the administration and Secretary Sebelius in particular know about their dismay and about this attack upon not only Catholics and EWTN, but really all people of religious belief.
Very good. Michael Warsaw, CEO of EWTN, thanks for being with us.
Thank you, Raymond.
When we return, Newt Gingrich joins us to talk about his run for the White House. The World Over Live continues in a moment. Stay with us.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. My first guest was Speaker of the House for 4 years. He plotted the Republican Revolution on Capitol Hill and has distinguished himself as an author, consultant, and film producer. He's also a Catholic convert and one of the lead candidates running for the GOP presidential nomination. We spoke to him earlier today in our D.C. studio. Newt Gingrich, take a look. I want to start with this HHS mandate. We've been reading so much about it, hearing so much about it. Every pulpit in the nation is fired up over this. You were one of the first people to draw national attention to this in some of those debates. Tell me, what would you do if you were president this November?
Well, I mean, what I will do on January 20th is issue an executive order suspending all of the anti-religious bigotry in the Obama administration. I will also ask the Congress to investigate the possibility of impeaching Judge Baer, who is a judge in San Antonio, who issued an injunction last year saying that not only could students not pray at their graduation, they could not use the word invocation, benediction, God. They could not ask for a moment of silence, and they could not ask the audience to stand, and that he would jail the superintendent. Now, I don't think we have to have anti-religious bigots in bureaucracies, and I don't think we have to have anti-religious bigots on the court. So as president, I would take a very aggressive position in favor of the freedom of religion.
Tell me for a moment, there's been a lot of focus on Catholic institutions, Catholic hospitals, Catholic churches, Catholic schools. What about those with a conscience who are employers, who feel uncomfortable offering this type of procedure and these medicines, if you can call them that, abortifacients and contraceptives, to their employers? Where do they go for redress, even if the Catholic Church gets an opt-out?
That's why you have to reestablish what George W. Bush had issued was an executive order that said no one could be forced to engage in a procedure against their religious beliefs. And I think that's you're going to see come back to that kind of position, that in fact we have to have a right of conscience. You know, people sometimes forget a major driving force in the creation of the United States was a belief that in Europe you couldn't have religious liberty. And so Catholics came to Maryland, Quakers came to Pennsylvania, Pilgrims came, and Puritans came to Massachusetts. John Williams goes to, or Roger Williams rather, goes to Rhode Island. I mean, all of these are religiously motivated people seeking freedom. And you see steadily over the last 50 years a secular governmental anti-religious bias building in this country.
And you feel you have a political opening here against Governor Romney. Why on this point of the HHS regulation?
I don't know if it's an opening, but it is. The White House was accurate yesterday in saying that Governor Romney had imposed on Catholic hospitals issuing abortifacients and had actually overruled his own public health department. His public health department said clearly under the right of conscience they didn't have to do it, and the governor's office intervened and said yes, they did. So in that sense, Governor Romney was on the same side as Obama in seeking to impose secular values on Catholic institutions.
Now, the Romney campaign claims that he vetoed that piece of legislation, and this was imposed on him.
Well, it's a three-step process. He vetoed it early on. They overrode his veto. His public health department said under the conscience clause, the Catholic Church was clearly exempt from because it was an earlier law. And then his office overrode his public health department. But it's fair to say that when he was governor, Catholic hospitals did have a secular ruling imposed on them against their religious beliefs.
Let's talk for a moment about what we saw just days ago. Washington State passed a piece of gay marriage legislation. The federal court out in California threw out Proposition 8. What would you do as president vis-a-vis gay marriage and it becoming a national issue? Clear it's going to the court.
Well, it's clearly going to have to be, one step would be to repass Defense of Marriage Act and eliminate the right of appeal to the court, which Congress has the power to do. It ultimately has to be a national solution. I mean, you can't have people who have one legal status in Connecticut and a different legal status in Rhode Island. Right. The system won't work as a practical matter. So this is inevitably going to end up as a national question.
And what would you say to those who say, but you're denying us our rights, we're married in this state, we love each other, what's wrong with that?
Well, and all I would say is that based on 3,000 years of tradition and our religious beliefs, that marriage is between a man and a woman, that there are other legal things that can be done, but marriage itself is a sacrament between a man and a woman.
Let's move on to immigration. I've been fascinated by your immigration position for a number of reasons. First of all, you support elements of the DREAM Act. You're also on record as saying you don't think families should be split up. Famously, the grandmother mentioned. How much of that, the evolution of that issue in your own mind, was due to your Catholic faith?
Not a lot of it. I mean, I've talked with various cardinals and bishops and with people in the church, and certainly Monsignor Rossi, the rector of the Basilicas, had a huge impact on me. But it really grew up. My daughter, my older daughter, Kathy Lubbers, lives in Key Biscayne in Miami. And conversations with people and talking about genuine human concerns. Helen Kriebel, who's done terrific work at the Kriebel Foundation, had a big impact on me. And as you thought about it as a practical thing, I'm for controlling the border. Right. I am for having an easier deportation policy if somebody's shouldn't be here. For example, an MS-13 gang member, we should be able to get rid of pretty easily. I'm for a guest worker program. But it also occurred to me as you're trying to sort this out, if you're going to be honest about it, what do you do with somebody who's been here 25 years? They're married, they've been in the community, they've been paying their bills, they've been working, they have children and grandchildren. I don't believe we're going to go in and as you pointed out, pick up a grandmother and deport her forcefully, with her entire family surrounding her, and probably with her church providing a sanctuary. And so I've tried to find the practical road to get to a legal system that's enforceable, and to do it in a way that virtually everybody who has no attachment will go home and either come back as a guest worker or not come back, but that you will finally, and there's no amnesty involved, nobody gets citizenship, but I do think there are practical ways to solve this.
Let's talk about climate change for a moment. Does the government have a role in regulating climate change, and do you think the climate change is man-made?
Well, first of all, I think the jury's out on whether it's man-made or not. I'm an amateur paleontologist, so I look at very long time horizons, and the Earth has been dramatically warmer than it is now. I was actually at the Field Museum in Chicago over Labor Day, and they had dinosaurs they collected from the Antarctic. So clearly it was much warmer at one time. But in addition, I think you have to have a question, you know, even if it was happening, is trying to stop it the most practical thing to do? You know, the Dutch have faced the ocean for all of their history. The Al Gore answer would have been to lower the sea. The Dutch built dikes. So you could ask a question, are there more practical other ways to solve it rather than giving control over our lives to a government bureaucracy? I think cap and trade was a socialist effort to use the environment as an excuse to gain control over the whole economy.
I've spoken to a lot of your colleagues in recent weeks, here on the Hill, all around. You were subject to blistering attacks from some of them a few weeks ago, notably Bob Dole, who said you're a one-man band who rarely took advice from anyone. How has your leadership style changed since you were Speaker in this building behind us?
Well, just to take that one example, Senator Dole and I had fundamental disagreements. I was against tax increases. He was for tax increases. Those were pretty intense personal fights. My leadership style has always been one of listening very widely and then making decisions. And when I was Speaker, I think I was very focused on getting things done. That's why we reformed welfare, with 2 out of 3 people going back to work or going to school. We had the first tax cut in 16 years and the largest capital gains tax cut in history. We had the only increase in intelligence spending in the 90s. The 9/11 Commission called it the Gingrich plus-up. And we got to 4 consecutive balanced budgets for the only time in your lifetime. Now, that takes real leadership. And in a legislative branch, real leadership sometimes steps on toes. It makes people uncomfortable because it says, you know, I mean, watch the current mess. You know, I didn't go along to get along. I said, we're going to get things done.
You've heard the latest volley of attacks from Mitt Romney, your competitor, who says you and Rick Santorum are part of the problem. You're both Washington insiders, and under your leadership, earmarks doubled. You would say what?
First of all, if you look at the Heritage Foundation study, under my leadership is the only time earmarks came down in 20 years. Second, the earmarks we got engaged in a fight with the Clinton administration was simple. You had a conservative Congress trying to impose certain values on a liberal Democratic president. That's the legitimate part of the conflict between the legislative and executive branches. But I think it's grandly ironic. The only 2 spending cuts since World War II. 1981, I helped Ronald Reagan. 1995, I was Speaker of the House. The only 4 balanced budgets in your lifetime came because I was Speaker. Governor Romney likes to pick and choose selective things and then distort them. I think it's pretty hard to make a case that we weren't the most conservative Congress fiscally in your lifetime, because we actually got to a balanced budget while cutting taxes and bringing unemployment down to 4.2%.
In South Carolina, Catholics supported you overwhelmingly. But since then, in Florida, 56% of Catholics went to Governor Romney. 48% of Catholics went to Governor Romney in Nevada. How do you win this key voting bloc, this important swing vote? And as a Catholic yourself, how do you do it?
Well, I think, first of all, you recognize that the scale of negative advertising that Governor Romney waged in Florida, he spent more money in Florida attacking me than my entire campaign has spent everywhere in the country. And so given that barrage, I'm lucky I'm still standing. Second, I think as Catholics understand that he did in Massachusetts to Catholic hospitals exactly what Obama is trying to do in terms of imposing secular values, I think his support among Catholics will go down again, just as it did in South Carolina. Anywhere that I can communicate and can be effective in reaching people, we're winning votes. And the question is, how much money does he have left? And he did not go into Missouri and Minnesota and Colorado on Tuesday and spend the kind of money he had already spent in Florida. And we now have a pretty good sense that if he doesn't outspend you by 4 or 5 to 1, he can't win.
How do you now reemerge, if you will? The narrative here, at least in Washington, is Santorum swept 4 states now. He is the conservative alternative to Mitt Romney, and Gingrich has negatives at 56%. How do you combat that, and what do you do to bring your message of solutions back into this race?
Well, first of all, this is the same city that said in June and July I was dead. It's the same city that after I was ahead in Gallup by 12 points in December, when I got clobbered in Iowa by negative ads, said I was dead. Then when I came back and won in South Carolina, it held its breath, hoping that Florida would prove I was dead. You know, so Washington will be the last city in the country that accepts the Gingrich presidency, because I think they understand I represent real change. Starting at CPAC tomorrow, what I'm going to lay out is big solutions to get America working again. And I think by any fair person who looks at what I'm prepared to do for the economy, for the price of gasoline, for national security, for balancing the budget, and compare it to Romney and Santorum, will decide you have 2 timid candidates and 1 bold candidate. And I think the country instinctively realizes you've got to have bold changes in Washington to get back on track and to get America working again. Timid steps aren't going to get the job done.
I want to turn personal in our remaining moments here. We've gotten a lot of emails since our last meeting. And the question that routinely comes up, there is this still the discomfort with the baggage, if you will. And they're asking repeatedly, is your marriage with Callista, has it been normalized in the Catholic Church?
Yes, we were married in the church. I went through an annulment. You know, she's only been married once to me.
Right.
So, but I went through the annulment process. We're totally sanctified by the church, married in the church, and that's the only way we could be taking communion. I mean, otherwise it would be totally inappropriate.
How has your faith sustained you through this process, at times bitter and ugly, not only to you, but toward your family members?
Well, when we did our movie on John Paul II, 9 Days That Changed the World, I was very struck by his belief, be not afraid. He didn't say have courage, because you have to have courage to overcome your fears.
Right.
He said, be not afraid. And there's a passage where someone describes his belief that the church, that the Soviet Union was against the cross because you could shelter under the cross, and therefore you could be safe from government. And I think that that's part of it. I find that, for example, we first heard the bishop's letter on the Obama administration in Mass in Jacksonville. Everywhere I go, and we just had Mass in Las Vegas this last Sunday, everywhere I go, I find that the priest and the community, the congregation, are all embracing. When people walk up and say, welcome home, and that it really is a giant community of believers. And that's something that you can fall back into. I would also say that Callista in particular has had an amazing number of people who walk up to her, thank us for running, tell her that we're in their prayers. And I think she would say that we've had the people, while the media gets tough and the opponents' ads get nasty, people have been wonderfully positive.
Final question: who's your favorite saint, and who do you rely on?
St. Paul. I think that his understanding of the challenge of being Christian in a pagan world is amazingly relevant to today, and I find him to be somebody whose writing is permanently teaches you and strengthens you.
Very good. For more on Newt Gingrich and his campaign, you can visit NEWT.org. And for the record, we've invited all the presidential candidates to appear on the program. We hope to bring each of them to you in the coming days, assuming we can work out all of the schedules and everything else. My next guest is the president of the Acton Institute for the Study of Religion and Liberty, and boy, We couldn't use him at a better time. He's a regular World Over contributor, and this is his first appearance here in our new Washington digs. Would you welcome Father Robert Sirico back to the
Great
World
to
Over.
be here.
Great
Nice,
to see you.
nice,
How do you like that
beautiful.
view? The
Very
balcony's nice.
Yes.
Let's talk for a moment about this HHS controversy. It is, of course, causing a brush fire all over the nation, starting in the pulpits, and it's going from there. I want you to focus on this Army controversy where you had Archbishop Broglio, the head of the military archdiocese, writing a letter to his own priests, and the Army telling him, you can't read that from our pulpits.
Can you imagine if Caesar had told St. Paul that he couldn't write an epistle? I think that the officials in the higher echelons of the Army did not understand that a bishop's letter to the faithful, and not just to his priests, it was to the faithful under his pastoral responsibility, that this is an exercise of religion. This is the pastoral function of a bishop. And so this is outrageous, aside from the fact that it seems to me to be a violation of the rights of...
Well, and they had a phone conversation. They ended up allowing the letter to be read, but they removed the line, we will not comply with this unjust law.
Right.
Which, why are they editing the religious expression of a minister, of a priest?
What if Archbishop Broglio had said, like St. Paul, we say we will not serve, we will serve God rather than men. I mean, that's a statement of civil disobedience as well. Again, a denial of the Christian faith.
And just amplifying on this, there's been a lot of spin about the way in which this issue, this HHS mandate, has been framed. I want you to listen to Senator rather, Kirsten Gillibrand of New York. This is how she described this entire controversy. You listen to.
Republicans are trying to make it their decision on what the women of this country can do with their own bodies. Let's be clear. This rule respects the views of religious institutions and individual conscience and freedom. A strong exemption is included that allows churches and houses of worship to opt out of providing birth control. This is already the law of the land in 28 states in our country. This should not be a religious issue.
So Senator Gillibrand says this is not a religious issue. This is about contraception. You say what?
This is not about contraception at all. It's about whether or not institutions outside of just the church building, that is, religious institutions that emerge from the church's inspiration, can govern their own lives, and whether or not our consciences are going to be forced to provide services that we deem to be intrinsically immoral. This is a religious freedom issue. This is not a contraception issue.
There's also this attempt to really narrow this and make this about the Catholic Church and these men telling women what to do with their bodies, that nature.
Well, that's the Planned Parenthood mantra that you always hear. No, quite emphatically, you wouldn't have had the dissent on the left, the Washington Post, editorials in various liberal magazines, if this was just in defense of a stodgy bunch of old men who don't want women to control their sexuality. This is not the case at all. There's a broad opposition to this, and I have to tell you, I'm very surprised that the White House hasn't already backtracked on this, because this is not serving them. You know, we said quite a while ago, I forget which show it was on, but I drew the distinction in the language of Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and the President. There was a subtle shift talking about freedom of worship versus freedom of religion.
We heard that in the State of the Union just a few weeks ago.
Watch that phrase, because freedom of worship means you can worship God, but freedom of religion is that you can't build institutions that are the extension of your worship of God. What if my freedom of worship involves taking care of the sick, clothing the hungry, ministering to people in universities, teaching, educating? This is a violation also of our freedom of worship, as well as the institutions of religion.
I want to shift gears just slightly and play this clip. This is former Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi. Now, she was asked a question about this HHS mandate and the outrage it has sparked throughout the church. Here was her response.
First of all, I'm going to stick with my fellow Catholics in supporting the administration on this. I think it was a very courageous decision that they made, and I support it.
Now, when you have... I always find Nancy Pelosi playing the theologianette very amusing.
She's very amusing. Here you have a Catholic,
it's a complete
probably
distortion.
One of the most high-profile Catholics in the country, saying, I support my fellow Catholics in supporting the administration. How many Catholics are supporting her in this?
Well,
from the left, from the right, everybody has abandoned this mandate.
It's not the Bishops' Conference who have come out ferociously on this. Last count, about 170 bishops have issued pastoral letters, and everyone I'm talking to is very concerned about what this represents in terms of real religious liberty. The animosity that's being expressed and has been expressed. We have to link this, though, to the expansion of government, because what you have here in the whole universal, the Obamacare agenda to begin with, is the complete subsuming of various institutions in the civil order, civil society, non-governmental institutions, into itself. Now, if you do that, then you can dictate the terms on which they operate, and this is an extension of that. Even if the White House backtracks on this is what it reveals is the intention to do. What's the next step? Is it going to be mandatory abortion? I think that that the case in England that you reported on earlier is a case in point. That's just 5 miles down the road.
Yeah. This is just the beginning. And we read a report this week, the Heritage Foundation is reporting the dependence on the federal government is up 23% in the last 2 years. What does that dependence imply, and what powers or rights are we ceding to the federal government?
This is the whole logic of this kind of expansionist mentality of government, so that you gain constituents by offering subsidies. You gain a constituency here because you're offering a subsidy here, and here, and here, and here, and you offer the Baptists this, or the Catholics that, or the gays this, or the women that, and then you build your political constituency. But what happens is you have politicized all of society. There's then no longer a distinction between society and the state, no longer a distinction between God and Caesar.
Yeah. I want to go to the phones. Jack from North Carolina, you're on the World Over Live. What's your question, Jack?
Yes. Are you there?
Go ahead.
Yes. I want to ask Father Sirico, why does not Catherine Sebelius, why is she not excommunicated from the Catholic Church?
Well, I'm not her bishop, so I can't answer that. I honestly don't think that Secretary Sebelius goes to Mass, so there's no opportunity to refuse her communion. I mean, she's excommunicated herself, it would appear to me, given her repeated and bold public stands. I would say the same thing about Nancy Pelosi as well.
Yeah.
Now, the act of excommunication is a particular
The formal pronouncement of that is something separate.
Yeah, it has to be done.
But we should say Archbishop Naumann, Joseph Naumann in Kansas City, who was Kathleen Sebelius's bishop, engaged her in a year-long conversation. She refused to recant or back off of any of her positions. He asked her not to present herself to communion. She did. So then he publicly went forward and said, we are denying this woman communion. And that's where it stood when she took the post here in Washington. But she certainly is someone who's not only been put on notice, but publicly called out by her bishop, not because he wanted to make a spectacle of this, but because he was his hands were forced.
Yeah, no, I spoke with him about this, and the pastoral concern in his own face, you know, you could just see this was one of his flock.
Yeah. Now you hear from DePaul University in Illinois and Georgetown University. They're shrugging at this mandate because they say we already provide contraceptive services through our health care plans. See, it really isn't such a big deal.
Well, this goes to the whole question we've discussed. It's really funny how this issue is bringing together our discussions over the last few years, because this really goes to the question of Catholic identity, doesn't it? They should have asked themselves that question the way that EWTN has asked itself that question. What if this is mandated? They should have done this a long time ago. I mean, the bishop's formation of that that subcommittee on religious liberty was in anticipation of this kind of action. The Manhattan Declaration from a year and a half ago that I was a part of, that is now really, all of these things are coming home to roost. And the fact that DePaul and Georgetown certainly and other Catholic institutions don't see this as an issue is precisely the issue.
We saw Prop 8 overturned this week in California. Your thoughts on what this portends? Once again, it seems to me you're going to have this conflict coming together again between religious expression, religious belief, and the mandates of the state. In this case, the state saying gays and lesbians should be allowed to marry, and the church saying, no, they may not in these chapels or in this church.
Yeah, what's going to happen then when somebody wants to rent the church or wants to rent the ballroom,
the hall, or the church hall,
all of this? Or what if they go to the point in saying, no, you as a priest are acting in your capacity as a minister of the state to witness this wedding. Therefore, you must perform these ceremonies. What happens if that happens?
Yeah. No, it creates real tensions there that I think
really does.
We will see.
But I think this is why it's galvanizing, that it's bringing all the issues together, and we have to stand as one and say no to this.
Have you been following this Komen thing, the Susan Komen Foundation?
Very sad.
This is a breast cancer institute. They raise money for the research of breast cancer. For years, a lot of pro-life people have stayed away from them, frankly, because they give a sizable amount of money, $600,000 plus, to Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
A week ago, Nancy Brinker, the head founder of Komen, came out and said, we're no longer giving this. We're no longer giving this grant out. And there was an eruption in the media. People were rending garments. Your thoughts on, is this at all tied to the mandate we're seeing from the Obama administration?
It represents the greater cultural reality of abortion, contraception becoming a sacrament. The actual amount of money that Komen was giving to Planned Parenthood as a proportion of Planned Parenthood's budget was not very big. And Komen thought to itself, you know, we're a cancer research organization. The money we're giving is for pap smears. And they don't even perform pap smears. They refer out. So they said, we're going to withhold the money. But it immediately became a politicized issue. And who does this affect? It affects the largest foundation for supporting research into cancer for women. So it's going to affect women.
I want to play a bite. This is Karen Handel. She was the vice president at Komen who resigned. According to media reports, she was sort of the tip of the spear in moving for the removal of this Planned Parenthood grant from Komen. Listen.
The last time I checked, private nonprofit organizations have a right and a responsibility to be able to set the highest standards and criteria on their own without interference, let alone the level of vicious attacks and coercion that has occurred by Planned Parenthood. It's simply outrageous.
And there you have her talking about this notion that somehow Planned Parenthood and the media assumes that a breast research organization has a responsibility to give money to a contraceptive and abortion organization. Why? The missions don't. I mean, the purported tie-in was they provide breast screenings at Planned Parenthood clinics. Actually, all they do is
refer.
Yeah, they refer women to get mammograms elsewhere. They perform no mammograms.
Mammograms.
So it's a very odd story how this sort of took a snowball effect. And
this is the whole example of people who claimed the banner of tolerance becoming very intolerant. So they want the whole of society to genuflect to their standards that they set.
Very quickly, Mary from Baltimore in our remaining minutes. What's your question, Mary?
It's not a question. It's just I support this. I've been a Catholic for 64 years. I was date raped and refused to have an abortion, and I find it absolutely unthinkable that the medical care that I need I can't get because people are paying for this type of service. And I just hope that our bishops, our church, and all Catholics will stand strong on this issue. And I hope that those of us who are Catholics who are not terribly strong will get on this bandwagon because it literally makes me sick.
Mary, thank you. Thank you for your witness. Thank you for your courage and your commitment to life.
Thank you, Mary. And you know, the danger in all of this is, and the Catholic Church being sort of the primary voice you hear in all this, is that people imagine this only hits the Catholic Church. It hits everybody with a conscience. Anyone who's opposed to these services will be obliged to provide them to their workers, period.
We get hit with it because we are very consistent about what we say, regardless of the PR, and we run the largest institutions.
Final question. Pope Benedict released his Lenten message this week, and it is, I quote, "Christians must not be silent in the face of evil." Your thoughts on...
Amen. Very prescient. And to be given that, you know, admonition in the midst of Lent, where we're to have this internal struggle with the temptations and the reality of evil in our lives, is very apt and timely for us to think about this as a social phenomenon that we're facing.
And where do you think this goes next, this HHS battle? What's your guess? Do you think the administration pulls back? And
well, I would have
I'll tell you my
that.
guess after you tell me yours.
You know, if you had asked me earlier in the day, I would have said they're going to pull back. It's amazing they didn't pull back. The president wouldn't take any questions when he was meeting with the Italian president, and I understand that the press officer wouldn't receive questions.
Yep, Jay Carney's doubling down.
So, but now I understand he's come out of a Democratic retreat and reaffirmed his position on this. So I think it continues. It's a good opportunity to have a very wide-ranging debate about this. What do you think?
My personal view is they're going to keep because the Catholic Church has been so out front and the media coverage has been so extensive, which was not anticipated by the Obama administration, according to people I've spoken to in the administration. My guess is they carve out some narrow exception that the Church will be granted, the Catholic institutions. And there's some notion from some bishops saying, well, if they give us the exemption, we'll all go away, you won't hear a word.
I hope that will not be the case, because we have the Orthodox now with us, the Southern Baptists with us.
Rick Warren sent a Twitter out, Chuck Colson, all these groups are saying, we don't want any part of this either.
No, we cannot accept this, and really what needs to happen is the whole Obamacare thing needs to be rolled back.
We'll talk about it next time.
God
Father
bless.
Robert
Good to see
Sirico,
you,
thanks
Raymond.
for being
Pleasure.
here. For more on Father Robert and the work of the Acton Institute, visit acton.org. When we return, Congressman Chris Smith joins us to talk about the Obama administration's hardline stance on the HHS contraception sterilization mandate and Congress's response. The World Over Live continues in a moment. Stay right there.
Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over Live. For nearly 30 years, he's championed the cause of life in the House of Representatives. He joins us tonight to talk about the continuing controversy over the Obama administration mandate that compels all employers and healthcare providers to offer contraceptive and abortifacient coverage in their plans. He's also one of the co-signatories to a bill that would reinstate conscience protections throughout the government. Welcome back to the program, Congressman Chris Smith of New Jersey. Great to see you. Let's start with, why is the White House, why would President Obama risk in an election year exposing himself through a bill like this, alienating this important Catholic base?
Well, you know, it is arrogance. It is a sense that when they started implementing, this is the beginning bitter fruits of Obamacare. Much more lies ahead. Remember, Obamacare does not get fully phased in until 2014. And then public funding for abortion will be in every state, despite the executive order and all the nonsense and the subterfuge that we saw during the debates on Obamacare.
The Bart Stupak.
But this is the beginning, and this, I think they miscalculated because they thought they could jam this. And what the bishops and the church and Catholic Charities, Catholic Relief Services, EWTN, who is now going to sue, Priests for Life, they're suing as well. Belmont Abbey, we know they jumped in right away and they're suing. But we can't rely on a judicial remedy. We need a legislative remedy. And frankly, everything we do might still come up short only because it still has to gain muster in terms of a legislative strategy, and the president would have to sign it. The president has, as you said earlier, doubled down. You know, he is so captive of Planned Parenthood and all the abortion individuals and organizations that if they say jump, he says how high. So if he backs off, it'll be a nuanced approach, and it'll only be there for a while, and then if he gets a second term, his abortion extremism will be unprecedented.
Now, you've made the statement that you said this mandate is an attempt to force Catholic health care to cease to be. How so?
Well, the Catholic Church and other faith-based organizations, people of conscience, don't want to provide for their employees abortifacients, Ella, Plan B, contraceptives, sterilization, and they have a right to conscience to say they can't be compelled, coerced, forced by the federal government to do so. So these institutions, and Notre Dame would find itself paying about a $10 million fine to Uncle Sam every year, and would have to dump its employees onto the so-called exchanges, Catholic Charities, all of these groups. And as Father Sirico said so very well before, the Church has such a wide and robust effort to treat the hungry, to help the sick and the elderly and the frail. It is a magnificent response to Matthew 25, when our Lord said, whatever you do to the least of our brethren and to those who are disadvantaged.
Before we run out of time, tell me about the Respect for the Rights of Conscience Act that Jeff Fortenberry
has crafted an excellent bill. It has over 140, 150 or so co-sponsors. I'm one of them. Our leadership under Speaker Boehner and the rest of the leadership in the House and the Senate on the Republican side, contrary, sadly, to the Democratic leadership that is joining the White House on this, it would manifest in a durable way that based on religious belief or, and this is important, or conscience or personal conscience, you know, a moral belief, you can say no to this mandate. Never before has the federal government mandated benefits in private insurance, and it's not only 100% coverage paid for by the insurer. It also is a venue, a means by which people, you got to refer them, how to go and, get the abortion.
This would be a remedy for employers outside of the church. Non-church entities could also make use of this conscience
And they
protection.
have, I mean, there are many conscientious people who don't want any part of this, and now they're being coerced by the Obama administration. The mask is off. You know, we've seen it incrementally, and now it's in a full gallop. You know, the administration tipped its hand a little bit earlier than I think they would have wanted to with the election just around the corner. But the full mask is off. I mean, now we see in plain daylight exactly where he would take this country, and coercion is very much a part of it. And conscience and religious freedom, religious liberty is being trashed.
We only have 30 seconds. We should also tell people this is only the beginning. We haven't begun to talk about the end-of-life issues and what will be contained there.
All of those
left all at the discretion of the Health and Human Services.
That's exactly. And just briefly, I know you're out of time. The IOM, the Institute of Medicine, which is supposed to be this group of people that dispassionately look at what a preventive health care mandate should look like. It is filled with people from NARAL, Planned Parenthood, contributors to abortion causes. The National Review did an excellent piece on it.
Breaking
online,
down all the people who are members of this thing.
And who you put on a task force or a committee dictates a certain result. And it was already cooked into what then Obama would say, oh, the IOM has given me this recommendation, I'm just acting on it, coming out of Obamacare. Senator Mikulski, sadly, was the one who put the language into Obamacare, of course, working with the White House. So this so-called preventive health care is this is a huge, huge conscience violation. And the church, thank God, in a magnificent way is saying, no, not now and not ever. And we need to stand behind them as never before.
Yeah, but this one, I worry everybody's focused on this one little issue of the health care, health insurance, when they're missing the larger issue that Obamacare itself, which we talked about when it was going on.
We did.
And worried about how this could be interpreted and the broad language that would be, then content would be breathed into, that people will have to live and sadly die by.
And very quickly, the fire sale for Catholic hospitals and Catholic ministries in that second term of Obama administration, because we won't be able to run them anymore. Those people of faith and conviction, because you will be fined, ruinous fines that will put you out of business.
I got to go, Congressman Smith. Thanks for being here. It's all the time we have. But the show continues on Facebook and Twitter. Go to RaymondArroyo.com. The Twitter and Facebook pages are linked on the left-hand side of the site. There you'll find the latest news, some commentary, and things you won't find anywhere else. And I'm announcing a new contest tonight. In honor of Mother Angelica's 89th birthday in April, I want to hear from you. I want to know how Mother Angelica has touched or changed your life. Send your notes to Raymond@RaymondArroyo.com. Put Mother in the subject line. The author of the best stories will receive a free copy of one of the Mother Angelica books I've co-authored or edited or wrote about Mother or with Mother. And we may air or read your letter on air. So remember to send those Mother Angelica remembrances to Raymond@RaymondArroyo.com. Until next week, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, I'm Raymond Arroyo. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye now.